First of all, thank you so much for having me here today, and I want to say how incredible it is that A2B2. Hey, y'all want to save the post office? Let me hear you. Hey, on the pentacycle, you all want to save the post office? Anyway, I'm really grateful to be here with you, and I'm grateful that there is such a community of folks who are focused on public goods, on public health, on public mail, to come here today to emphasize how critical it is that we save the post office. I was asked today to talk about how critical the post office is to facilitating the essence of democracy, which is, of course, the ability to vote in the midst of the worst pandemic in over 100 years. I don't have to tell you, we're all here wearing masks, we're all here distanced, because we are suffering through a pandemic that has taken 136,000 lives. And what's crazy is that 6 months into this pandemic, the number of cases continues to surge for the very reason that the people in charge today are unwilling to invest in basic public health, unwilling to invest in basic public services. The same logic that would tell a country to cut its basic postal service is the logic that keeps us suffering because we've disinvested in public health, because we are unwilling to reinvest in the public good. Voting involves coming together in groups. It involves touching the very same things as other people just touched. In the middle of a pandemic that is spread through small droplets of air in enclosed rooms and through fomites, the things that we touch and leave virus on them, the idea that we would have to vote in the middle of a pandemic is a public health catastrophe. There's evidence to suggest that early on, when cases were surging, in states that had to vote, that voting was associated with increased probability of transmission. And given that the same leadership that wants to shut down our postal service is unwilling to mount a real federal response for public health, the only logical solution here is that we vote by mail. And to be able to do that, we for damn sure need a functioning postal system. And the last thing I want to leave us with is that we have a responsibility to ask ourselves as a society whether or not we are willing to invest in public goods anymore. The logic that tells us that we should cut one of the single oldest public services in American history, the U.S. Postal Service, that started as the Pony Express, that's older than this country itself, is the same logic that told us that we should disband the Pandemic Response Unit in the National Security Council, that told us that we should disinvest in agencies like the CDC and local and state public health departments, that tells us that we should not provide basic health services for every single American as a human right. The same logic that tells us that you shouldn't have a job in America simply because you are here and it's in your best interest and our best interest that you be employed, that we can't do a federal jobs guarantee. The same logic that tells us that federal leadership is impotent in the face of addressing climate change, that same logic is underlying everything we're talking about here today. We are forced to go into our homes, to avoid contact with one another, to risk getting sick if we don't obey those things. 136,000 people dead, millions more sick because of that logic. It is literally the illness, and we've got a responsibility to stand up to it. So I am really grateful to A2B2 for organizing this today, for standing with the U.S. Post Office, to all of my colleagues who are here today to talk about the response that we need. And let's not forget that taking on this pandemic, that exercising our democratic rights, that empowering our federal government and public services in general, these are all part of the same fight, and I'm really proud to be here to fight that fight with you today.